This might be the most historically important video we've ever done on this channel.
Hello. Something very special today. I've been in conversation with Rudolf Drabek, who was one of the key engineers in Austria who worked on the Philips N1500 and N1700 formats, VCR and VCR LP, and then the later V2000 format. So, Rudi, guten Tag. Can you tell me a little bit about your background with Philips?
Of course I can. From 1961 to 1970 I was a radio development engineer. Next great step was an order in 1970 from the commercial department people in Eindhoven to develop a VCR cassette recorder, before there was an LDL-1000, as you know. At that time in Vienna we had two factories, Philips Fernsehwerk producing TVs, my factory, and Virag producing video recorders and speakers and tape recorders. As a VCR needs a receiver and a recorder, both factories had to work together. The order for the receiver was given to my factory and I was the man to finish the development of the receiver.
So I believe your involvement at the start was particularly with the receiver side of the N1500, which was obviously very similar to what was in a Philips TV. But of course the big challenge was that they had to have a modulator because TVs in those days didn't have audio-video inputs. So no one had ever really done a modulator before. How difficult was that?
That means to include a receiving part as used in TV sets, with the exception to receive a channel not viewing at the same time. So it has to be sure to receive and record it, and all runs okay. Therefore a fine-tuning system had to be added, and also a modulator later to play back on TV, because the TVs were so-called Altstrom, which had a direct connection to the main, so there was no SCART or whatever. Also some new devices are a must in VCRs. A modulator, as said just before. At that time TVs were directly connected to the main, so a cable connection was no way, as said just before. This modulator had to be done with very small oscillator drift, smaller than 100 kHz, over the consumer temperature range. Therefore a cavity, silver coated, was used and coupled to the video modulator IC OM343. I have still some. Pictures of this you can see in radiomuseum.org. This IC was also developed from Philips for that purpose. At the time, normally diode modulators were state of the art, but this modulator has also an audio intercarrier modulator, FM modulator. In total, 6 parts of Philips departments were involved. IC development, tuner development for the modulator and the antenna amplifier, which developed the first modulator, the mechanical lab in Eindhoven that developed a clock timer with adjustable recording start and recording time. It's a very nice device. I have one in my cellar. Wiring for the recorder part, and my factory for the product development of the receiving part, which was a fork of the K7 TV developed in Eindhoven. A lot of coordination had to be done to create the N1500. We also carried out receiving tests in UK, High Wycombe, and at Crystal Palace. Interesting. Looking inside an N1500, you will see the different PCB technologies used because of the two main factories involved.
I always thought this clock looked like an old-fashioned cooker timer, and I imagine that Philips had just gone to some cooker manufacturer for it. Scott, Rudi tells me that 2 different divisions of Philips have worked on this machine, producing the circuit boards. There was the tape recorder division and the television division, made different panels in here. So can you tell me what looks different to you in there, on those 4 panels you can see?
I think that one looks much tidier.
Yes, I think that one is made by the television division. And you're right, it does look a lot tidier than the part of the machine that was built by the tape recorder division. For one thing, it looks like the tracks have been laid out, well, possibly by computer, but certainly in a much tidier fashion than these, which look like they've been hand designed. So they just go to wherever they need to go. These all go in nice groups, like modern PCBs do.
And there's no hand wiring on that one. It looks much better.
A little bit about history, if I can. Was the Philips N1700 type or VCR video head based on a previous design of an open reel tape recorder?
Yes, the recorder before the N1500 was a LDL 1000.
Of course, the LDL 1000, yes. So that was the predecessor to the N1500. Do you know if the format was interchangeable? You know, apart from the fact that one's in a cassette and one's open reel, do you know if the actual recording format was interchangeable? Because presumably if it was, that would have helped to minimise development time.
I don't know if it is exactly the same format, but this is of minor importance regarding the development time. See the included Excel file to find possible VCR parameters. I have it for HP67 programmable calculator, prepared and still working. Find my report in web and transferred it to Excel, but I don't remember all parameters. In principle, there are always two solutions for a system: transport direction and drum movement in the same direction or in opposite direction.
I will link to that spreadsheet below. I've added a few translations to make it a little easier for English readers to understand. But it does a lot of the calculations showing N1500, N1700, V2000, VHS and Beta. And if you have the specifications, you could add some other formats, or any reader could add CVC or Super Video Cassette or some other formats. I've never really thought before about where the various formats have the tape running in the same direction as the spinning head or opposing it, and I think from what I can work out that they generally run with the head running in the same direction as the tape. Please leave comments below if anybody knows any different.
I do not know if this is really of importance, because later on there were also reverse directions possible as a feature of a VCR. During development of the N1700, the first idea was to develop a field skip recorder. Like in movies, each half picture is read 2 times. It's clear that this device had no slanted heads. We had a prototype of this, but there were more rays in the picture, maybe coming from effects. We don't know it, we have not investigated further. So the system as on the market finally came out. This info was never made open to the public. It's only for now it is possible to say that.
Well, as I'm sure you know, there was a USA format called Cartravision that used skip field recordings, and it was a commercial failure, whereas N1500 and N1700 really give quite good pictures, so I think Philips were very wise to avoid that approach. Rudy, can I ask you a little bit about the head drum design that went on for the N1500 and N1700? Because, of course, prior to N1700 and VHS and Beta, video formats like N1500 and Pneumatic had a guard band, so they wasted a lot of tape. And the big challenge, I think, was to increase the amount of tape usage. So VHS, Beta, N1700 all use a azimuth technique where the heads are on different azimuths to increase the density. Can I ask you, was the work that was done on N1700's video head, was that as a result of what had come out of Japan with VHS and Beta, or was it something that Philips independently managed to work out?
Not for N1500, because it had a guard band between the tracks. N1700 had no guard band, so slanted gaps are a must to eliminate interference crosstalk of the adjacent track. This can be done due to different azimuths of the two heads, so for the Y signal it is no problem to eliminate crosstalk. For color there is another solution which has a so-called line criterion between the tracks and a one-line TV delay line, the glass delay line, you may know it. This line criterion must be 1.5, 3.5, 5.5 and so forth, or 3.5 and 5.5 different for each head if you have from the calculations a number of 4.5 or 2.5 or whatever. That means one head is out of 180 degrees plus or minus one length of a TV line on the tape. Slanted gaps costs nothing and eliminates luminance crosstalk so perfect.
So these heads are not 180 degrees to each other. One is shifted by one line length. And I believe, Rudy, that was your idea, wasn't it?
The offset of the video heads from one TV line comes from the color system that has to be used to eliminate crosstalk, and therefore the glass delay line with one line delay was used. It was my idea because to have this offset of one TV line, because from the calculations it came out that the line criterion was I think 2.5. So with use of one TV line offset, you have for one track you have 1.5 and for the other track you have 3.5. That fits normal to the necessities of the color crosstalk elimination format.
Right, that's very interesting then, that I should be able to see the difference between an N1500 and an N1700 head under a microscope by looking at the circumference and the distance between the two heads. So you say there's about 1 millimeter gap or change in position on the N1700 head tips. I'll look at that.
No, it is not exactly 1 millimeter, it is one TV line. And as you know, half of the circumference is one track of 312.5 lines, and you have to divide this half of the circumference by 312.5, and then you have the offset that the video heads have.
Rudy, how did the Philips team who'd been working on N1500 and 1700, how did they feel when they saw VHS and Beta coming from Japan? Was that a big concern that there were going to be strong competition for N1700 VCR LP?
Not only we in Vienna, also Eindhoven slept. We tested VHS and Sony Beta. Akai, I think, was the first model we tested, bad in picture quality compared to N1700 because that's enough. I want to explain it a little bit more. The tape consumption of N1700 was about two times higher than VHS, and therefore they needed a noise cancelling system for the video signal, which was not necessary in N1700. Sony system had superior picture quality.
So you're saying, based on what you saw at the time, Beta had a clear lead in terms of picture quality over VHS. Well, I'd support that. So the Akai tape, was that VHS or was that their VK format?
No, Akai had the normal VHS cassette, so I think it has the same format.
Rudy, were you involved at all in the problem and the correction of the problem that happened between Philips and Grundig on V2000, where they put the audio heads in different places relative to the video heads, as a result of which tapes recorded on one manufacturer's machine would play with a lip sync error when played back on the other? And understand that the solution in future models after the very first series was to move the audio heads to a center position halfway between the two, so that there was then going to be compatibility between the two brands. Did you have any knowledge of that at the time?
No, I was not involved in that, because it was a mechanical problem due to many unclear or maybe unclear standards regarding the distance on tape between sync pulse and audio head and the corresponding half picture. Can be seen very good in the service documentation.
Rudy, I don't know if you know anything about this, but rumour has it that as part of the collaboration between Sony and Philips that resulted in compact disc, that Sony got to use the dynamic track following feature from V2000 on their professional Betacam SP machines. Do you know if there was any collaboration going on there between Philips and Sony?
I have no info about that. The dynamic track following system was a system requirement on V2000 due to tracks of only 22.6 microns. We had a special project for the actuators together with Philips Research Lab for this device. With DTF you had the possibility to have feature modes undisturbed, not the stripes, but I think it is not often used in normal use of a video recorder.
Okay, so really the DTF feature on V2000 was not so much about the trick functions, which were nice, that you could, on most machines, you could do noiseless picture search and freeze frame. It was more about a requirement of the format, because the track height is only about half of what you get on VHS and Beta. That's interesting, that.
So in my personal feeling it is nice to have, but not more.
Let's take a look at these video heads I have from the VR20 and 2021 models. This is a rather nice case it comes in to protect it. And what's unusual is this rotary transformer arrangement is very common. You see this on other formats, but you don't normally see these traces in the middle, or tracks in the middle. So that's the slip ring connections to the piezoelectric actuators on the heads. And maybe we can get to look at those a little bit under the microscope. It depends how much we can see underneath this rotary transformer. Let's have a look. So head tips themselves don't look particularly unusual, although the slice here is probably somewhat narrower than on a standard VHS or Beta deck. But you can see it's all mounted on this quartz block, and that will be connected to the slip rings. Let's see if we can get a bit closer to that. Unfortunately, we can't see an awful lot of how the piezoelectric actuator pitches the head during operation, but it is able somehow to alter the angle that the head tip takes relative to the drum. To really see more, I think we'd have to do a destructive teardown of an old head, which I could do if I can find one. I think I might have one somewhere. Take the rotary transformer off, and we might be able to see a little bit more of the piezoelectric actuator that the head is mounted on. Do you know if there was ever a chance that V2000 might have had hi-fi stereo audio added in the same way as was added to VHS and Beta?
It's a pity, because to adjust the same level of the video heads to get unpaired tracks with different track width, we need a break in recording to read a 232 kHz helper signal and during recording. And this pause is deadly for FM audio, because FM audio needs a continuous signal. It's a main design fact of the Video 2000 that we needed this break. At start of the Video 2000 project, it's not a design parameter to have FM audio. 4 low frequencies were used for DTF at playback. The 232 kHz signal to have equal track width was only very short in time, just a pulse train of some periods. The actuators were adjusted in this small time period, and this was enough for a half picture. That means for one track. It is constant. Maybe we would have found another solution to have FM audio, but we changed over to VHS. Was it 1984? I forgot it.
Okay, so it might have been non-trivial to add hi-fi stereo to V2000, and of course by the time Philips could have been looking at that, I suppose it was too late. Philips had switched over to VHS by then.
Yes, VHS had a far better marketing. There were talks on high level. Several times we heard it in the development department. It's always the same with Philips. Good ideas and very proud, but you see, the Laserdisc, for instance, with 30 minutes playing time, fork of it was an audio CD, Sony, Morita and Karajan, so factory in Salzburg. Many other items are developed by Philips and not marketed well. But I'm no specialist in this field of marketing, so I may be in error.
Philips, of course, also had the DCC format, which fell by the wayside. You may have seen my YouTube video where I repair one of those. It's a DCC 900. Do you know if auto reverse was ever something that was considered for V2000? I mean, it seems completely impractical, but I wonder if Philips had ever thought of that, or again, if it was just too late anyway.
I have no info about that.
Yes, I think it was just an urban myth anyway, that V2000 auto reverse was ever considered, because the only real way to do it would have been to, flip the tape over completely. There's no way you could do it in terms of the deck. Do you know if Philips and Grundig had any kind of disagreement about the SVC format which Grundig produced, because they went off and did that themselves without seemingly any involvement in Philips?
It was not known in the development department.
Rudy, the V2000 format unfortunately gained a bit of a reputation for unreliability. Was that felt by the Philips engineering teams, that it wasn't as good as it should have been?
It was very well known that we had quality problems at the beginning of V2000, and this comes from the fact that the protrusion of the video head at the circumference of the drum was too high. The abrasion of the tape on the video head was so that the height of the gap of the video head was reduced to 0, which means that the head had no longer the possibility to read the tape information. This was solved very quickly in the following way. The end of the gap of the video head was hidden under the circumference of the drum. So we had really not wear excessively. That means the video head could never wear out.
You've told me something I didn't know there. So head wear was a problem in the early machines then on V2000. Actually, I have some brand new heads for the 2020 and 2021 machines, if anyone wants to buy those. The 2022 and later models, they have different head actuator voltages because, of course, they do the picture search and freeze frames. So the heads for those are incompatible. But actually, the heads are really quite easy to change on V2000. I'll give that. And Rudy, I've seen an article that you did on the Radio Museum website where V2000 recordings were made visible, sort of developed with a magnetic fluid. And what I think was wonderful there is where the information that's been recorded on the tape has been recomposed back to a visible image, albeit with false colour. So you can actually see the picture on tape, which is absolutely fascinating. Rudy, was there any special engineering work that had to be done when Philips went on to VHS, or was it kind of all done for them anyway since the format was fixed?
No, it was no problem to change over to VHS. It was a little bit easier than to develop the V2000 system. As you can see from the spreadsheet, only minor changes were necessary to change over to VHS. It was done on the spot.
So on VHS, Rudy, were you involved at all in the infamous Charlie mechanism? Just in case my viewers don't know what that was about. It was a VHS deck which laced up more like a beta. It was a C-loading mechanism based on a lot of plastic components, and it was notoriously unreliable. Philips had to release a upgrade kit to fit to these machines to make them quieter and more reliable, but it was a fairly big task to fit, and I did fit one onto a VHS hi-fi machine I had way back, and it was a pretty time-consuming process.
At the time of Charlie, we got a new boss in the development department. He and I were incompatible, so I changed over to the engineering department at start of Charlie. Later it turned out that it was very good for my later career. After 10 years in engineering, I was assigned to lead the electric development VCR in Nuremberg, when Philips and Grundig formed IR3 for some years. In 1995, the end was foreseeable of the video recording using time. and the end of the video recording technology. It would not survive, we have seen. The direction in Nuremberg had first plans for golden handshakes for the people.
Rudy, thank you so much for all your time in answering my silly questions. It's been fantastic to learn so much from you.
Colin, I appreciate this interview. I'm one of the still living engineers in Europe in the VCR field. I'm now nearly 80. I have visited a lot of VHS factories in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Japan. In Kuala Lumpur, there was a factory that was planned together with Philips for a maybe later cooperation, but it did not come into action. I was invited later when to visit the factory in Kuala Lumpur when it was finished, so it was really honorable for me. I was also head of the delegation to Osaka Kitakadoma Panasonic. Here you see a photo with a closing of in 1998. After Charlie, we used the hi-fi VCR Panasonic tape deck and learned there how to adjust it in production process. We got it delivered from Braunschweig, which I also visited. I accompanied the complete life cycle of this technology for home use. I'm thankful for that opportunity. Therefore, I really thank you also for the possibility to give some insight to the story behind it. If there are further questions arising, please don't hesitate to ask me. Thank you very much.
Rudy, danke, auf Wiederhören.
Ja, wenn du mit Deutsch aufhörst, dann sage ich natürlich auch Dankeschön, dass du mir die Gelegenheit gegeben hast für dieses Interview. Und ich hoffe, dass es doch von einigem Interesse war, eben weil so wenige Leute in Europa noch leben, die mit Videorecording zu tun hatten. Dankeschön.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning something about the history of Philips video recorders from the 70s and 80s. Please remember to like, share and especially subscribe, and I'll do a lot more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.
Tschüss.